Hello, hello. Surprise. Well, I wasn't sure I was going to do this stream tonight until literally like 5 minutes ago, and I was like, F it, do the stream. I was thinking about waiting for tomorrow, but I kind of wanted to debrief on the events of the day while they were still fresh in my mind. And so I don't know how many people are actually going to join and listen in because it's 11:30 p.m. on a Sunday night and some of you have to get up in the morning and go to a real job. Luckily, I happen to work into the evening on a regular basis, and so I have a different schedule. I'm just a night owl. It's just what it is. It is what it is. So I wanted to congratulations, John Morgan. Yes, taking the first spot from Bot because I didn't announce that I was doing the stream. Bot is probably caught by surprise if she's awake. So today was, well, a little eventful. And I have to start off by explaining my position on the Republican Senate nominee in New Hampshire. Now, I do not think that Don Bolduc is a bad man. I don't. I actually think he's a good guy. I would have, if the Senate race, and I said this, actually, I did an event over the summer with Don Bolduc, in which we were both on a panel where we were talking about what was going on in the schools. And I flat out said this was back when I thought that or maybe it was last summer. It was, you know what? It must have been last summer. Oh my gosh, it was so long ago. In 2021, during the summer of 2021, I did the event with him, and this is when we thought that Chris Sununu was going to run for Senate in New Hampshire. And I flat out said at the event, I would absolutely endorse Don Bolduc over Chris Sununu for Senate every day of the week. 100%. Wasn't even an issue for me. It was easy. I think Don Bolduc is a good man. I think Don Bolduc does genuinely care. And there are many things that I do agree with Don Bolduc on. However, my position on the war in Ukraine from the very beginning has been consistent. I do not believe we should be involved in any way. And that's hard for me to say because, as you guys know, my husband is from Ukraine. So that means I have family there. For about a month, my husband, but I mean very recently, it changed about a week ago, but for about a month before that, my husband did not know if his brother was still alive because his brother is in the army in Ukraine in the war right now. And Chrissy Mayer simped my video. Chrissy Mayer wishes she was a real activist instead of a failed comedian that's making her shot at fame in politics. You want to know, side note before we go back to the serious stuff. And by the way, guys, I'm not ashamed of this video in any way. No, the moon's not somber. It's not somber. It's all good, Alatra. I'm not ashamed of the video from the Don Bolduc event in any way. This was exactly what we planned it to be, which I'm going to talk about in this stream. If Chrissy Mayer, here's the thing with people like Chrissy Mayer. Failed comedians do very, very well in conservative politics. They do. There are many failed comedians that start talking about conservative politics because all of a sudden it gets them the audience that they crave, that they were never able to build on their own. If Chrissy Mayer is in favor of nuclear war, then I think it's great for her to make fun of my video. Thanks for the exposure, Chrissy. Because my message in that video was clearly anti-war. Now, I'm going to bet she may have also made a crack about my weight too. Guess what, guys? When you're wearing like 4 layers of clothes to include a hoodie, it is what it is. And I was wearing like 4 layers of clothes to include a fucking hoodie. Anyway, yeah, I didn't think well, that's exactly what did happen. I was the one who was piled on. Oh, did she clip it out of context? Oh, so Chrissy Mayer is not only a failed comedian that's trying to grift off of conservatives so she can pretend she's a real comedian because she can't make it on her own, she's also an unethical person. I know I'm shocked by this revelation. But anyway, let's go back to the beginning. So what you guys need to know is that it is what I was saying is that it is not easy for me to say I don't think the US should be involved in the war in Ukraine because I do have family there. Like my husband's brother's in the army. He's in the war right now. My husband thought he was dead for a month because he hadn't heard from him. My husband's family has been, asking for money to fix the house that they live in because parts of it were destroyed due to the bombs that Russia is firing indiscriminately in cities in Ukraine. So it's not easy for me to say that I don't think the US should be involved. But the reality is that US involvement in this should only and exclusively be in regards to peace talks. That's it. No military and no money. And if we can abolish NATO on top of that, that'd probably be a pretty good thing. Because right now, we are very literally hurling ourselves towards nuclear war because of the U.S. involvement in Ukraine. Now, the Libertarian Party, one of the foundational principles of the Libertarian Party is anti-war. That's not going to change. Anti-war, anti-foreign intervention. And so it's kind of a big deal. It is one of the core issues that so many libertarians care about. Now, I will admit, this is not my primary issue. It's not. My primary issue is the schools, which is about separating government and education, which is also part of the Libertarian Party platform. But there are so many libertarians in the Libertarian Party who are libertarians because they're veterans. Because they've been to war and they see what it is. So for a lot of people, this is the most important issue. And when Tulsi Gabbard announced her departure from the Democratic Party last week, one of her major talking points, and I am going to do like my reaction to Tulsi's video. I actually haven't watched the whole thing. I've heard the high level talking points. I haven't watched it yet because I want to save it and do like a reaction of it. But it is my understanding that one of her major talking points was in regards to nuclear war, and she doesn't think that the Democratic Party are doing anything to prevent it. More so, they're the ones that are actually fanning the effing flames of it. And she's right about that. She's right. Oh, Elijah said something nice about me. I love Elijah. Chrissy Mayer could suck a dick. Elijah, fucking awesome. Champion. I don't know what he did to get fired from the Blaze. I've heard things, but I don't really care. I think Elijah's awesome. I really do, even though there are many points that I disagree with him on. Anyway, so when Tulsi Gabbard made this big deal about leaving the Democrats because of war, cool, I can get behind that. Okay, cool. What doesn't make as much sense to me is when Tulsi Gabbard claims to leave the Democratic Party because of war and then turns right around and comes to New Hampshire to campaign for a Senate candidate, the Republican Senate nominee in New Hampshire, Don Bolduc, when Don Bolduc is on record saying that he wants to go all in on Ukraine. Let's listen to Don Bolduc on Fox News. And this is not an edited clip, not in any way. And it's actually funny because many of the Republicans that I talked to today knew about this clip. They knew about it. They cited it. They said it was edited out of context. No, it's not. What we're about to watch is not an edited clip. This is Don Bolduc on Fox News. Let's listen.
It's this resistance that's going to win. But what boggles my mind, Steve, is the fact that we haven't gone all in on this already. Diplomatically, informationally, militarily, and economically. This is not a time for pause right now. We need to get in there and we need to help them on the ground. We have columns of his troops lined up, ready to be, interdicted. And we need to give that kind of help to the Ukrainians. But we're just sitting back and we're not doing anything. And we're just saying, everything is on the table. Well, now's the time. Putin is a global threat. He is an enemy to the world. And that's what we have to start telling people he is. And we can't take any pressure off China either. We got to go after China because they're in this with them. And we don't want them going into Taiwan. So this is huge. And we got to come together. We got to lead the world in supporting President Zelensky and supporting the Ukrainians. And what we have been doing now is just standing by. There is more to do. We can do it, and we should be doing it.
So let's just be really clear what you mean there. Again, limited time, so I'm sure it can't be an exhaustive answer.
Right.
But what specifically, you're not talking about American troops. I think everyone's agreed about that. How can we help specifically? No. What should we do that we're not doing?
We have indirect fires. Oh, sure, Steve. We have indirect fires. We have indirect capabilities. So does NATO. We have all kinds of things that we can be helping with without having to put ground troops in there. And that's what he's asking for. And we have to get more stuff in there. And we have to get more combat help in there. We can do that. I know we can do it. I've seen it done before.
Sorry to interrupt. What is combat? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is combat help? Just so everyone's clear what you mean that's not troops.
Sure. You got to get the resistance, the stuff that they need. But more importantly, we're going to have to help this resistance out. And I talked about this earlier with General Kellogg on Fox and Friends on an earlier program about CIA findings and about using special operations troops.
Now, did that sound like it was something that was cut out of context? Because he said multiple times, over and over and over and over again, that he wants the U.S. involved. Now, some might argue that Don Bolduc has changed his position since then. The problem with Don Bolduc, and again, I actually think Don Bolduc's a good guy. I really do. So this is not personal. But the fact is that this is not the only issue that Don Bolduc has flipped on when it was politically convenient for him to flip. He also flipped on voter integrity. The day after he won the Republican primary, the day after, he went from saying that we need more resources and protections going into voter integrity to investigate elections for reasons, to saying Donald Trump won the election and everything is great. That was the day after he won the Republican primary in New Hampshire. Now, I care less about that issue. What I'm trying to establish is sometimes Don Bolduc makes statements and then gets backlash for those statements, as he did with this clip. And then he updates his position based on what's politically convenient. Here is the problem with that when it comes to war. If you make a statement like, if Don Bolduc is put in a decision-making position about, if I, as an elected senator, am I supporting the war or am I not? If Don Bolduc makes the incorrect decision at that moment without the political backlash, then that's going to cost a lot of lives. This is a serious issue to fuck up on. And Don Bolduc, who is a general, special forces, he knows that better than anyone. He comes from one of the most well-educated, most experienced places when it comes to war. He knows that better than anyone. And that was a full 2 minutes and 15 seconds of him saying we need to be involved. We need to go in. We need to be involved. We need to go in. Just because there are some new people that have joined since the stream started. I know it was a surprise stream. I want to play this clip at the beginning, and I want to show people again, and I want people to have an opportunity to listen to this again, because this to me sounds pretty effing definitive.
It's this resistance that's going to win. But what boggles my mind, Steve, is the fact that we haven't gone all in on this already. Diplomatically, informationally, militarily, and economically. This is not a time for pause right now. We need to get in there, and we need to help them on the ground. We have columns of his troops lined up, ready to be, interdicted. And we need to give that kind of help to the Ukrainians. But we're just sitting back and we're not doing anything. And we're just saying, everything is on the table. Well, now's the time. Putin is a global threat. He is an enemy to the world. And that's what we have to start telling people he is. And we can't take any pressure off China either. We got to go after China because they're in this with them. And we don't want them going into Taiwan. So this is huge. And we got to come together. We got to lead the world in supporting President Zelensky and supporting the Ukrainians. And what we have been doing now is just standing by. There is more to do. We can do it, and we should be doing it.
So let's just be really clear what you mean there. Again, limited time, so I'm sure it can't be an exhaustive answer.
Right.
But what specifically, you're not talking about American troops. I think everyone's agreed about that. How can we help specifically? No. What should we do that we're not doing?
We have indirect fires. Oh, sure, Steve. We have indirect fires. We have indirect capabilities. So does NATO. We have all kinds of things that we can be helping with without having to put ground troops in there. And that's what he's asking for. And we have to get more stuff in there. And we have to get more combat help in there. We can do that. I know we can do it. I've seen it done before.
Sorry to interrupt. What is combat? I'm sorry to interrupt you. What is combat help? Just so everyone's clear what you mean, that's not troops.
Sure. You got to get the resistance, the stuff that they need. But more importantly, we're going to have to help this resistance out. And I talked about this earlier with General Kellogg on Fox and Friends on an earlier program about CIA findings and about using special operations troops.
So that sounds pretty clear to me, what Don Bolduc's position was before he got political backlash from it, and then mysteriously, psych, I take it back. But at the event today that we went to, well, let me back up. So I find it a little curious, given Don Bolduc's very clear statement that he believes that we need to go all in on Ukraine, which he said very clearly on Fox News not that long ago. I find it a little bit curious why Tulsi Gabbard, who just left the Democratic Party for them being too pro-nuclear war, is coming to New Hampshire to campaign and endorse Don Bolduc. Don Bolduc is not against the war. Don Bolduc is not against U.S. involvement in the war. And if Don Bolduc gets elected to Congress, he will absolutely, unequivocally vote to involve us in some way in the war in Ukraine. There is a 0% chance that Don Bolduc will be an anti-war vote. So why is that Tulsi's first stop after leaving the Democratic Party? This is one of those betrayals that I take a little bit personally, because I like Tulsi. I liked Tulsi in 2020. I went to Tulsi events in 2020 in New Hampshire. And that was before I had even officially decided to leave the left. When I was still a Democrat, I liked Tulsi. And I really wish that Tulsi Gabbard, when she had dropped out of the presidential race in 2020, had not endorsed Joe Biden. she should have endorsed Trump. Tulsi should have endorsed Trump. But Tulsi laid low for a couple years, and she decided, well, I'm sure she decided a long time ago, but just came out as leaving the Democratic Party. And I'm sure she strategically planned that announcement. She had it all laid out to set her up to be the Republican VP nominee in 2024, which is what I think she wants. But I feel personally betrayed that I believe Tulsi Gabbard really cared about being anti-war when the first stop on her tour is New Hampshire to campaign for a Republican in my backyard that is clearly and unequivocally not anti-war. And I was not the only one who's offended by this, because there were libertarians that worked on Tulsi's campaign in New Hampshire. Well, there were ones that live here, there are ones that live other places, but there are libertarians that worked on Tulsi's campaign that were like, WTF, what the hell is she doing? And so when we found out last week, or not, I mean, maybe like a couple days ago, that Tulsi was coming to campaign for Don Bolduc in New Hampshire, we were like, oh, really? Really? And we made a plan. And we said, we are going to go, members of the LPNH, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, which is the party that is the home of the only anti-war Senate candidate in New Hampshire, and that is Jeremy Kauffman. We said, we are going to go to one of their events and ask some questions. And we had been talking about this for several days. Now, my involvement in this was that my plan, honestly, was to kind of be quiet. I wanted to go to the event to see what would happen, and I wanted to maybe take some video. I wasn't actually planning on getting involved. I will tell you how I got involved in a second, because it was just an accident of circumstance. That's all it was, and I will explain all that. But this has been planned for several days among members of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire to show up to this event to ask some questions. We talked about it in a group chat for a couple days, and we met and planned for like an hour before the event. What are we going to ask? How are we going to do it? How are we going to make our point? And by the way, if anyone doubts me on this, there was a documentary film crew filming the whole thing. So there is video footage of every single thing that I'm saying. This was completely planned by a dozen people on film. I don't know what's going to happen with that footage, but it does exist. And the plan was that we were going to go to the event and politely ask questions. We were going to ask questions about, oh God, I have to get up my disguise. Oh no, hang on.
It's this resistance that's going to win. But
while we're talking. So we were going to ask questions about a couple of things. We wanted to ask questions about why Tulsi is endorsing a war hawk. That was one of the things we were very interested in. We also wanted to ask questions about why Don Bolduc is not demanding that Jeremy Kauffman be included in the debates. Because the fact of the matter is that Tulsi was excluded from the debates when she ran for president, and that was wrong. And so, and Don Bolduc has actually told us privately on multiple occasions that he will vocally support Libertarian Senate candidate Jeremy Kauffman being included in the senatorial debates. He said it to us, and now we have him on film saying it. We got him on film at this event saying it because we showed up to ask questions. That's a different story. So we wanted to ask about war. We also wanted to ask about why Don Bolduc had not publicly stated that he wants Jeremy Kauffman included in the debates, Jeremy Kauffman being the only anti-war Senate candidate. So those were the two things, and then there were strategies around who was going to ask what, and maybe hurling some like Russian swears or something. There was a Russian spear, okay, and the plan was really whoever was able to get the mic was going to try to ask one of those questions, but the plan was to do it totally politely. The plan was never to disrupt the event. And we did not disrupt the event. We didn't. The plan was never to be disruptive. It was to ask our questions, film them with the answers, and let the words speak for themselves. Well, we all go over to the event. And we're some of the first people there. I think we were there like 45 minutes early or something. We all go over to the event, a dozen of us. We start to go in the room for the event. And there's no one there. And with our group is Jeremy Kauffman, who is one of the contenders for the seat that Don Bolduc wants, right? So there were a bunch of us that went, and we are fairly positive. I don't really think there's any way around this. Let me be brass tacks. Don Bolduc's campaign staff knew who we were. Now, this should really not be a surprise. We had been kind of hinting on Twitter that we were going to go. So, like, they did actually, we had been tagging Don Bolduc and Tulsi Gabbard in tweets for a couple of days. And so there was kind of like advance notice that the Libertarians might be showing up, and the Libertarians travel in packs. And so they knew who we were. They didn't even allow, they kicked Jeremy Kauffman out of the building. So they didn't even allow Jeremy to stay. Jeremy was not going to be disruptive. Jeremy wasn't even going to ask a question. He was just going to stand there. So they kicked Jeremy out. They made Justin O'Donnell go to the media section because he had a camera, like a really nice camera. And instead of allowing him to film from his seat, they made him go to the media section and then forbid him from walking around and filming stuff. He had to stay in one distinct location. Justin O'Donnell is like he's like a well-known activist in New Hampshire. They went up to the campaign guy, like the head campaign guy, went up to Reed Coverdale and told Reed, "We don't want any disruptions." And Reed said, "We're not going to disrupt things. We just want to ask questions," which was the truth. And the campaign staffer told Reed, "We will have a Q&A at the end. You can ask your questions then." And we thought, okay, great. So we started planning in our group chat. We started talking in the group chat. Like, what are we going to ask? What are we going to say? We were chatting back and forth through the whole thing. So the event happens. It started about an hour late. And Tulsi comes on. And she gives her really generic stump speech for Don Bolduc. And then Don Bolduc comes on and he gives his stump speech. Oh, by the way, I forgot. I was wearing a disguise. Now, one of the Libertarians that came with us to the event, he worked on Tulsi's campaign in 2020. And so he was nice enough to drive 5 hours to bring a whole mess of Tulsi Gabbard t-shirts. So several of us, me included, I put a t-shirt right over my hoodie. Several of us were in a disguise. And it was funny because like I was wearing this shirt and people were like, "Oh my God, that's a great shirt. That's a great shirt." I literally tweeted 2 hours before this that I was wearing a disguise. This is one of those instances where you can flat out tell people that you're going to trigger them and they still don't listen. They don't. So many of us were wearing Tulsi Gabbard t-shirts to throw people off the scent. And I actually think that's why they didn't like kick me out, to be honest. So the event goes like fine. And then so Don Bolduc finishes his speech. And then Don Bolduc and Tulsi get up on the stage and hug, and then they say, "Okay, we're leaving. See ya." And we were all like, "What? What? You literally told us that if we were behaved, which we were, we would get a chance to ask our questions." And then they canceled the Q&A because they knew we were there and knew we were going to ask questions. Now, they're probably going to make an excuse by saying, they're going to say, "Well, it was a time issue." Dude, if you're having a town hall, you take questions from voters. They took 0 questions from voters. So, Don Bolduc was on the stage, and Tulsi had kind of gone into the backstage area. So a couple of people from the LPNH went and went after Don Bolduc and got him on camera saying that he wants Jeremy Kauffman in the debate. Good. Okay. What I did with a couple other people is I started exiting, and we were looking for Tulsi. So I was exiting the room where the event was with, a couple other people there, and I see Tulsi Gabbard in the lobby. And I'm like, okay, there she is. And we started going towards her to ask the question. And the plan was to ask the question very nicely and very politely, but to get it on camera. Tulsi sees us coming out. She turns around and starts running out the back door. And so I just happened to be in a position, and I was like looking around at the other people. I was like, is someone going to say something? Is someone going to say something? Is someone going to say something? And I just happened to be in the best position. This was not planned. I did not plan to do anything at this event. I just happened to be in the position to do it. I was like, well, my voice carries. And so as Tulsi was running out the back door after the event, after they had refused to take questions, I shouted, Tulsi, why are you coming to New Hampshire to campaign for a war hawk when you claimed to be anti-war 2 days ago? Why are you campaigning for a war hawk, Tulsi? And Tulsi kept running out of the building. But what did happen is, because we were in the lobby with Don Bolduc's Republican supporters, is they all turned around and started staring at me. And they were like, you're an infiltrator! So Don Bolduc's supporters, Republicans, started yelling at me, saying, Don Bolduc does not support war. He does not support it. He does not support it. Well, we just saw in the clip from Fox News that he in fact does. So they all started yelling at me, and of course they saw my Tulsi shirt, and they were like, you're a plant! You're a plant! You are here under false pretenses! Don Bolduc does not support war! And I was like, he really does, and this is what he said on Fox News. And I literally started reading them the transcript off of Fox News that was handed to me by one of the LPNH members, because we had planned to read the effing transcript. And these Republicans were crazy, like unhinged. They were like Democrats. It was really that they were like Democrats. And as it turns out, well, someone got video of a part of the incident. Let me show you. Now, this is not, there is other footage of this. There is other footage of this. This is just the very first one that got released, okay? So I don't know why Caroline did this. I actually like Caroline. Caroline is she's a reporter for the New York Sun. She's done a couple stories on the Free State Project. She comes to some of our events. Like, she's a good egg. I don't mind her. I don't know why she said that I got in a shouting match, though, because I was being shouted at by 3 effing Republicans. So let's watch this video of the shouting match. Oh, you guys can't hear? Oh, you can't hear? Hang on. Sorry. I could hear the audio. I thought you guys could. Hang on. Okay. Take 2. That he wanted to go all in on Ukraine. Don Bolduc is for all of us.
You're really not a
no,
Tulsi Gabbard supporter.
No, it is absolutely
She's not a Tulsi Gabbard supporter.
No, it's not.
She's a
Oh, so
plant.
you're telling me they changed his position right after he got
You're a plant. You're not a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. You're a plant. You're not a Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, she's a plant, man.
I absolutely
You're a
supported
plant.
Tulsi.
No, you didn't. You're a liar.
You gonna vote for Maggie Hassan?
You're Maggie Hassan.
I'm gonna vote for Jeremy
Maggie
Kauffman.
Hassan.
Only
A wasted vote.
Jeremy Kauffman for Senate.
A wasted vote. And when you get stuck with Maggie, it's your fault. You get stuck with Maggie, it's your fault.
So I had Real Nick Miles, Unwoke infiltrator. Thank you, Real Nick Miles. So I had asked Tulsi a very fair question, I think, about why she's supporting someone who wants to go all in on Ukraine. I started getting screamed at by Republicans who said, "You're an infiltrator, you're a plant, you're here under false pretenses." Dude, I had literally, but 2 hours before tweeted that I was coming in a disguise. I told you guys what I was doing. This should have been no secret to anyone. But the thing of it is like, what I'm really offended by is a vote for the only anti-war Senate candidate in the race, Jeremy Kauffman, is a vote for a Democrat. No, Republicans. No. And that's really what I wanted to talk about tonight, because that was literally the only argument that the Republicans had. The Republicans who were so upset at me for asking Tulsi Gabbard why she endorsed a war hawk. The only argument they had is, if you vote for the anti-war candidate, then Maggie Hassan will win. Well, guess what, Republicans? Not good enough. Not good enough. This is why New Hampshire is a blue state. Well, perceived to be a blue state. Because our 2 members of the House of Representatives currently, and will be after November, are Democrats. And our 2 senators are currently, and will be after November, are also Democrats. It is perceived that New Hampshire is a blue state because we send Democrats to the federal government. But do you want to know why we send Democrats to the federal government? It's because libertarians in New Hampshire can swing elections. And if the Republican line for why we owe Republicans our vote is, we're not Democrats, that's not good enough. There is not, well, I won't say that. Republican candidates in New Hampshire are not going to win the support of libertarians in New Hampshire if their only argument is we're not Democrats, because we don't see a difference between the 2 parties. So if you say, vote for me because I'm not the other guy, I don't view you as any different than the other guy. So why would I give you my vote? You haven't earned it. You haven't spoken to things I care about. You haven't spoken to my values. In fact, you yelled at me for asking a completely fair question. You called me a plant and said I was there under false pretenses. Do you think that's a way that you're going to earn my vote? It's even less likely now that I'm going to vote Republican than it was before this event, because it was the Republicans screaming at me that I was obligated to give them my vote because they're not Democrats. No, not effing good enough, man. Martin says Democrat and Democrat light versus LP&H. That's exactly right, Martin. And that is what it is viewed as by libertarians here. Nick Miles said, see, I would have been fine if she gave a response based on her military experience. Like, there's no need to hide from it. Come on, Tulsi. I kind of agree with that, Nick. I just wanted an answer to the question because it was a fair question to ask. And so if Republicans want to win the votes of libertarians in New Hampshire, which they need in order to actually win their elections, they need our votes, then they need to actually answer our questions instead of running out the back door like cowards and canceling Q&As when they find us in the building. If we've taken the time out of our day to come to your event and you prevent us from asking questions, you are not going to get our votes. And then even more than that, not only do you prevent us from asking questions, but you yell at us for even showing up in the first place. This is why Republicans are going to lose in New Hampshire for those federal seats. This is why they're going to lose. Also, because we don't like their candidates. We don't like them. We do not like Caroline Leavitt at all. She's the 24-year-old blonde girl that Republicans nominated for Congress. She's going to lose to Chris Pappas. Republicans had the opportunity to nominate Lily Tang Williams for Congress, and they didn't. I don't even know the name of the guy they nominated. This is how inconsequential that other congressional race is in New Hampshire. I don't even know the name of the guy who won the primary over Lily Tang Williams. The only name I know is Lily Tang Williams. I don't live in that congressional district, but I know a metric F ton of libertarians who would have voted for Lily Tang Williams for that seat. Unfortunately, they weren't given the opportunity because Republicans didn't nominate her. So the reality is that in New Hampshire, Chris Pappas is going to beat Caroline Leavitt because Caroline Leavitt is a 24-year-old blonde girl who, to libertarians, the ones that I've spoken to, comes off as a bimbo who worked for Donald Trump for a couple of months. That's why she got nominated. I don't even know who's running in the other congressional district against Annie Custer, so Annie Custer is going back to Congress. And Maggie Hassan's going back to the Senate because Don Bolduc supports the war. And I don't know how he talks his way out of this, particularly when he is not being vocal about supporting Jeremy Kauffman to be in the senatorial debates. Don Bolduc could very easily demand that Jeremy Kauffman be included in the Senate debate, and he is not, so he will lose. Don Bolduc's supporters are yelling at people who show up at his events to ask questions. That's not a way you get votes, guys. Spoiler alert. If you want people's votes, don't yell at them. Don't yell at them for asking questions. You know, I'm in a fair number of libertarian groups. Breaking the Flaw, I did get that email. I just saw it pop up. Thank you. I'm in a fair number of libertarian discussion and chat groups in New Hampshire. There are about 18,000 of them, but I'm in several. And so I feel like I have a pretty good sense of how libertarians view the Senate race in New Hampshire. Now, of course, we have our candidate in Jeremy Kauffman, who many people are supporting, though not all. But more importantly, what I want you to hear is this. Between the Republican and the Democrat, between Don Bolduc, Republican, and Maggie Hassan, Democrat, the libertarians that I've spoken with and have listened to pontificate on this issue don't view them as any different. They don't view them as any different. They view them as the same. In fact, many of them view Maggie Hassan, the Democrat, as just slightly better. Just slightly. I'm not talking about significantly. It's slightly. And some of them do view Don Bolduc as slightly better. Slightly. Not significantly. Not enough to earn the vote away from the Libertarian candidate, who again is the only vocally anti-war candidate in the race. So here's the thing. Republicans really think that because they view the Democrats as the most evil thing that has ever existed in the world, Republicans really think that everyone views the Democrats as the most evil thing in the world. And they project their beliefs onto other people. They think if we just go out there and we say we are not the Democrats, that is enough to earn people's votes. And it is not, because not everyone views the Democrats as significantly more evil than the Republicans. Most libertarians do not view the two parties as being different. They do not view them as being different. They view them as the same. They view them as being two sides of the same coin. They do not view the Democratic Party as being significantly more evil than the Republican Party. Republicans do stupid things like this where they come into my chat and they say, why are you anti-First Amendment? What? That doesn't even make any sense. Goodbye. But because Republicans really think that it is obvious to you know what this is like? This is like do you guys know when Democrats generally believe that like everyone sees the world the way they do, right? And that's why they kind of talk about like hating Trump supporters very openly. They view like they really think that because they hate Trump supporters and they thought Donald Trump was insane, that everyone thought Donald Trump was insane, and so they talked about it openly. Republicans do the same thing, but they do it to Democrats. They think that Democrats are insane, and they're not wrong, by the way, that Democrats are insane, but they think that everyone perceives Democrats to be sane and Republicans to be the rational ones that everyone is going to seek to for help. The problem is that's not true. But Republicans think they project this belief onto everyone else, just like Democrats project their belief onto everyone else that everyone hates Trump. Republicans project their belief that everyone views Democrats as monumentally more evil than Republicans. And so, of course, they're going to vote for Republicans if Republicans just show up at campaign events and say, we're not Democrats, vote for us because we're not them. The problem is that libertarians, many of them, not all, they're not a monolith. They believe lots of different things, but many of them do not view it like that. And so for libertarians, saying we're not Democrats doesn't mean anything. I talked, after the event today, after that video you just saw, you saw like a heated part of the video. And again, I feel like I was the one being yelled at. I was the one being yelled at by like 3 men. But what you didn't see is after that exchange, the libertarians, the dozen libertarians who were there, stuck around. When Don Bolduc and Tulsi Gabbard ran out of that building to avoid taking any questions at all, the dozen libertarians stuck around. And we started having really good conversation with the people there. There wasn't shouting. Republicans were a little mad, some of them. But there were many people who came up and said, I really wasn't sure about Don Bolduc on war either. And a lot of us had a lot of really great conversations with those people. And, there were a few that came up and said, you're wasting your vote. You're voting for a Democrat. No, I'm not. I'm voting for the only anti-war candidate in the race. And if literally the only argument that you have to present to me is that I should vote for your guy because he's not a Democrat and because you want the Democrats to lose, try again. You do not get my vote from not being able to take questions. You do not get my vote from not having clear and consistent policy positions. You do not get my vote because you stomp your feet and hold your breath and demand it. You get my vote by speaking to my values. You get my vote by talking to points I care about. You get my vote by answering completely valid questions. And none of those things happened today. And not only did none of those things happen today from the candidate that's actually running for election and asking for my vote, I was in fact screamed at on camera by his supporters. And this is a problem that I've always had with Republicans. Because if you tell Republicans something they don't want to hear, they spit in your face. Not literally. But they will insult you. They will scream at you. They will whine. They will complain. They will call you every name in the book. They will insult your appearance. They will do everything they can to attack you personally if you say something they don't want to hear. And they really think that that's a way to win your vote. I have been telling this to Republicans ever since Trump left office, which is when, by the way, they started alienating people who had left the Democratic Party in 2020, like me, to vote for them. There were a lot of people in 2020 who left the Democratic Party to vote Republican for the first time. And I have been really trying to explain to Republicans for a year and a half that they have been shitting on the people who took a chance on them. Do you know how many times conservatives have messaged out that they don't want anyone but the most hardcore purity tested conservatives in their movement and everyone else can suck a dick? Okay, they never say the suck a dick part, but they have absolutely said, if you don't pass our purity test, we don't want your vote. Well, they're starting to regret that now that the midterms are coming up, aren't they? They've been spitting in the faces of the people who took a chance on them in 2020 for a year and a half. Now, Republicans will say, we didn't win anything. We don't have any power. We can't do anything. What you can do is not insult the people whose vote you want. Because just because I gave you my vote in 2020 doesn't mean you're getting it again. I have been repeatedly trying to explain to Republicans that every time you insult someone, every time you spit in someone's face, every time you scream at someone, we don't care about winning elections, every time you tell someone, you're not on our team, get out, you're not allowed in our movement, every time you do stuff like this, you lose votes. You don't get our votes by saying we're not the Democrats. But Republicans don't listen. They don't listen. What they've done to me every single time I have brought up this point for the last year and a half is say, you're still a leftist, you're fat, you're ugly, you have a stupid haircut, GTFO of our party, you were never welcome anyway, we don't care about winning elections. That's not an exaggeration, that's actually happened on multiple occasions. On multiple occasions. And then I try to say to them, you understand that elections are won by getting votes, right? And they say, we don't care about that. We care about principles. We care about saving babies. Okay. Then you're going to lose every close election for the rest of your life because you are not listening to why you are losing votes in the first place. The 3 Republicans that were on that video that started shouting at me, not me shouting at them, they started shouting at me because I asked Tulsi Gabbard a very fair and legitimate question. They went right into the insults, didn't they? You saw it on camera. Let's watch again. Let's watch again. Let's watch these Republicans thinking that they're earning votes by insulting people. Let's watch. Don Bolduc that he wanted to go all in on Ukraine. Don Bolduc is really all of us.
You're really not
no,
a Tulsi Gabbard supporter.
No, it is absolutely not.
No,
it's not.
She's a
So
plant.
you're telling me that changes position right now? You're a plant. You're here under false pretenses. You're not a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. I was a Tulsi Gabbard supporter in 2020. I thought Tulsi, after I kind of got over my initial Pete Buttigieg phase, which I was in that phase when I was still a Democrat. It wasn't real. Okay, I regret it. But I became a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. I just had a fucking Republican yell at me that I wasn't a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. Really? What the fuck? And did you see this is by the way, this is one of the people who runs the LPNH Twitter. If you don't like a tweet that the LPNH Twitter has tweeted out, don't blame him, blame one of the other ones. He's a really good guy. His name is Eric. This is Eric. He is one of the people that runs the LPNH Twitter. Behind him is Reed Coverdale. He is also one of the people that runs the LPNH Twitter. Behind them is Nolan Pelletier. He is the chair of the LPNH. Did you see Eric holding up his phone? Right there. right there, and he had handed that to me. I had Eric's phone in my hand, and I handed the phone back to Eric. Do you know why Eric handed me his phone? Because on his phone had the transcript of what Don Bolduc said on Fox News. On his phone had the transcript. And I tried to show the Republicans who started screaming insults at me, here's what he actually said. And they didn't even want to look at it. They didn't want to hear it. Instead, they just hurled insults at me.
No, it's not.
She's a
So
plant.
you're telling me to change his position right now?
You're a plant. You're not a Tulsi Gabbard supporter. You're a plant. You're not a Tulsi Gabbard. Yeah, she's a plant, man.
I absolutely
You're a
supported
plant.
Tulsi.
No, you didn't. You're a liar. You gonna vote for Maggie Hassan? You're Maggie Hassan.
Oh, so the arguments they had is, we're going to insult you because you ask questions that we didn't like, and you're going to vote for Maggie Hassan, aren't you? That's all they had. And then I said,
I would vote for Jeremy
Maggie
Coffman.
Hassan.
Only
A wasted vote.
Jeremy Coffman for Senate. The
Wasted
only
vote.
anti-war
If you get stuck with Maggie, it's your fault. You get stuck.
if we get stuck with Maggie, it's my fault. No, Republicans, it's not my fault. It is your fault for not giving me any reason to vote for you. It is your fault for expecting me to vote for you simply because you're not Democrats. It is your fault because you insult people who could have voted for you over and over and over again. It is your fault because you don't have any coherent arguments. You just have insults. You don't get people's vote by insulting them. I don't know what is so difficult to understand about this for Republicans. I have no idea what is so difficult to understand. If you think that pointing in my face and saying, if Hassan wins, it's your fault, is going to earn you my vote, you are out of your mind. And look, he literally is doing that to me. He literally is on the video right there. So, Don Bolduc's going to lose it. Okay. Barring something miraculous, because I don't want to, listen, there could always be an October surprise, right? There could always be something that happens between now and the election that changes this. But barring any miraculous feat, Don Bolduc is not going to the Senate. And the reason is because Libertarians in New Hampshire do not support war hawk candidates, and he has not earned our votes, and he will not get them. He especially will not get them when he's running out of the building and refuses to answer questions. And the margin is close enough that it will probably be that Jeremy Coffman costs Don Bolduc that Senate seat. And no, we're not sorry. Because I want to explain why. Reed Coverdale, who was there with us today, wrote an excellent piece for his Substack. And I just want to read you a little bit of this. This is on reedcoverdale.substack.com. Let me pop it in the chat just to be polite. One of the most often things you hear about libertarians is they can't win. And this is an accurate statement for the most part. Libertarians have not gotten to a place where they can win statewide elections and implement policies they want. But they do have one ace up their sleeve. Throwing elections. Let me make this a little bit bigger so you guys can really see. In Arizona, there is a tight Senate race between Republican Blake Masters and Democrat Mark Kelly, with the Libertarian candidate Mark Victor covering the spread between the two candidates. Some argue that Blake Masters is a libertarian at heart, but he has run his campaign claiming that we need to put sanctions on Russia and support Ukraine in their fight against Putin, toughen up on China, and fight wars for our allies like Israel. The reason some believe that Blake Masters is a good option for libertarians is because of his history. He graduated from the Mises Institute and wrote compelling anti-war articles about 15 years ago. However, I would argue if we expected to throw any amount of support behind this guy, we should have a list of demands to show that he still holds any of our values. This is why you lose votes right here. This is why you lose votes. Because I have 3 Republican men shouting in my face because they're upset that I asked a question, and I'm the one that gets accused of getting emotional. This is why you will never, ever, ever get my vote again. Mark Victor could cost Masters the election in Arizona, and Republicans should try to learn a lesson from this should it happen. If they actually ran candidates that believed in small government, putting America first, and personal freedom, maybe they would win elections. If the Republicans were good enough, we wouldn't even have to worry about losing votes to a libertarian. And if he was leaning in our direction, he could compel us to get out of his way. We have a similar situation taking place in New Hampshire. Jeremy Kauffman has been polled up to 5% in recent polls, with a significant poll putting him at 4% as opposed to Maggie Hassan at 49 and Don Bolduc at 43. Don Bolduc has not given libertarians in New Hampshire any reason to vote for him. For the past several months, he has changed his position based on political opportunism and never given us any sort of reason to believe he'll try to calm down tension with Russia or China. He has said we need to go all in on Ukraine and need to go after China. He has said that Putin is an enemy to the world and that we need to support Ukraine. Until recently, the Senate race looked pretty easy, like a pretty easy victory for Maggie Hassan, until a recent surprise endorsement from an acquaintance of mine, that's Reed saying that, from Hawaii, Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard. As many of you know, Tulsi Gabbard, I don't know why people are confused about my politics. I'm a libertarian. I'm not a Republican. I'm not a conservative. I'm a libertarian. I have explained this on multiple occasions. It's really not confusing. Look at the Mises Caucus platform, takehumanaction.com. Look at the Libertarian Party platform, and you will understand my positions. It's really not that confusing. As many of you know, Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party a couple of days ago, condemning them for, above and all, dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. She had a litany of other reasons laid out in the video above, but the biggest one was the issue behind which she established her campaign seeking a non-interventionist foreign policy. Now, as I've covered before, Tulsi is no libertarian, and she's not even really anti-war, not a neocon, but endorsing Bolduc flies in the face of even her standards. She has consistently warned, she has constantly warned against escalating tensions with Russia through sanctions, proxy invasions, and NATO expansion. And those are all things that Don Bolduc has advocated for. See the video above where Tulsi schools Sean Hannity on Ukraine, and see the video in the tweet where Bolduc gives an almost identical answer to Hannity's position. And that's the stuff that we just watched. And you can go and watch the videos on Reed's site if you want to take the time to do so. Although I am disappointingly unsurprised in Gabbard's endorsement, I am glad that she did it. She has suddenly brought nationwide attention with her endorsement that she is not only endorsing Bolduc, but coming to the state to campaign for him. And here's where Republicans really need to listen if they want to understand why they will lose in New Hampshire. This gives us an excellent opportunity to point out to Bolduc that if he wants to win, he needs to give us some sort of assurance that he will stand on principles of liberty. However, even if he gives those assurances, they are as empty as his promises on the campaign trail during his primary. He campaigned saying the election was stolen. I don't believe that, YouTube. I'm reading an article. The election definitely wasn't stolen. I don't believe that. I'm not saying that. I'm not making that argument. He campaigned saying X and literally flipped his position a couple days after being nominated. Regardless of the outcomes of the ultimatum, the optics of the situation are nothing but a win for us. It sends a message to the two parties. If you want our support, you need to throw us a bone. And if you suck, we don't care which one of you wins. I'm going to say that again, Republicans. If you suck, we do not care if you lose. Okay, I wordsmithed a little, but you get my point. Another ironic level to this situation is that Jeremy Kauffman has been disallowed from coming to the debates through arbitrary polling requirements. This is the exact same thing that happened to Tulsi Gabbard in 2020 at the Democratic debates in New Hampshire. In fact, I personally went to a protest with over 100 Tulsi supporters from all over New England to demand that she be allowed to debate. When she comes to New Hampshire to campaign for a war hawk, pushing us closer to Armageddon, will she also turn her back on democracy that she claims to hold so dear? I will be attending. They had warning we were coming. This was not a surprise. I will be attending the first town hall that Tulsi will be co-hosting with Don Bolduc and plan to ask these questions directly. Join me if you can. I will also be attending the official debates in New Hampshire and protesting along with other libertarians if they don't allow Tulsi into the debate. And there's the campaign event. And I want to show this specifically because one of the things that the Republican supporters said when we said the reason that we yelled at them was they were running out of the building is because they didn't take questions. And then we were told by the Republicans there, you shouldn't have expected to be able to ask questions. This isn't a town hall. It was literally billed as a town hall. The event page literally said it was a town hall. They took no questions at their town hall because they knew we were there. They knew what we were going to ask, and they didn't want to answer it. If Republicans want our votes, hang on, there we go. If Republicans want our votes, we can't just keep giving them to them without any sort of demands. This is exactly how we end up with people like Crenshaw sending $40 billion to Ukraine. They need to realize they are an important part of their voting bloc, that we are an important part of their voting bloc in New Hampshire, and if they ignore us, they will lose. In New Hampshire, libertarians have very real political power. Now, we may not be able to win elections because here's what Republicans are going to say. You can't win elections. If you have real political power, then win elections. Well, we may not have the votes yet to win elections. But what we do have the votes to do is make Republicans lose. And when Don Bolduc advertises a town hall and then refuses to take questions because the libertarians showed up to ask them, then he assures himself that he will not get our votes. Because we absolutely do have the votes to make sure he loses. I have said a million times that I believe that the Republican Party needs to lose because they are not going to improve until they know that they will lose if they do not. The Republican Party likes to stick their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 we can't hear you. And they do the same thing over and over and over and over again. And they do so because they truly believe that we believe that they are better than the Democrats. But let me just really, once and for all, dispel that. We don't think you're better than the Democrats. We do not. We think you are the same as Democrats. And so until you start acting differently and listening when people tell you why you're not getting our votes, instead of insulting people or getting angry at them and pointing in their face and saying, you're the reason we lose. Libertarians are not the reason that Republicans lose. Republicans are the reason that Republicans lose. We do not believe that sending Maggie Hassan to Washington, D.C. is really that different from sending Don Bolduc to Washington, D.C. So why would we give you our vote when we have an anti-war candidate who speaks to our values, who comes in and hangs out with us, who will always answer our questions? Jeremy Kauffman will answer any question that anyone asks him. Jeremy Kauffman wouldn't run out the building when people are asking him questions. He'd sit there and talk to them. We have a candidate that speaks to our values, Republicans. It's not yours. And you don't get our votes by default. And if you want our votes, then earn it. Prove to us you want our votes. Don, if you want our votes, then the very first thing you need to do is to really make sure you issue a strong statement saying you do not want any U.S. involvement in the war at all. And then you need to issue a second strong statement saying that you demand that Jeremy Kauffman be included in the debates that you are included in. And Tulsi, to be quite frank, you should be issuing the same effing statement if you are having the gall to come to New Hampshire and campaign for a Republican, because you were excluded from the debates. And so it seems a little hypocritical for Tulsi Gabbard to support anyone being excluded from the debates. If you want our votes, it requires concessions. If you want our votes, it requires you speaking to our policy positions. If you want our votes, it requires that you take our questions and don't run away like a coward. And if you want our votes, you don't point your finger in our faces and say you are the reason that we lose, and then hurl insults. And if you insist on doing all those things, well, fine. But you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And you can whine about that. You can complain about that. You can stomp your feet and hold your breath in a huff and hope that that's the thing that's going to make us vote for you. But come November 8th, Republicans, you will lose. And we will not be upset about it. We will not be upset with an entirely blue congressional district in Washington, because we do not believe that the federal government matters in the grand scheme of things. And that's just the way it is, dude. That's the way it is. And that's not going to change. And there is nothing that you can do about it other than start taking our concerns seriously, show up at the table, talk to us and find out what we want, and then give it to us. Then give it to us. And if you don't want to do that, then the Democrat wins. We don't care. But you do. So how much do you want to win, Republicans? How much do you want to win? It really is up to you. It's not up to us. We can't force you to act like adults. We can't force you to answer our questions. We can't force you to speak to our issues. We can't force you to understand our values. But we can and do have the power to make you lose in New Hampshire. And until you wrap your head around that undisputed fact, you will continue to lose in New Hampshire. And by the way, Republicans, if you don't want libertarian candidates running in your statewide elections, if you don't want libertarian candidates to run for Senate or governor, as the case may be, do you know what you need to do? You need to remove the 4% requirement for ballot access. You see, this is an argument that I've heard from a couple Republicans tonight, that the LPNH shouldn't be doing statewide elections because we should be focused on local elections. We should be focused on getting people into the state house. Okay, true enough. The problem is that based on the rules that the Republicans support, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire does not have major party status in the state of New Hampshire, and the only way for us to get major party status in the state of New Hampshire is to get 4% of the vote in either the governor's race or the Senate race. And so we have to run candidates for the governor's race and the Senate race because it is the only way that we can attain ballot access in New Hampshire. Without ballot access, we have to spend months and months and months collecting petitions in order to get on the ballot. If you don't want us running in the statewide elections and spoiling your little congressional race, then you need to give us major party status. And if you do not give us major party status, then we will continue to run candidates in those races and we will continue to make sure you lose because it is the only option that you have given us. Game fucking on. How much do you want to win, Republicans? I promise you that if you give the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire major party status, then we will have absolutely no reason to run for governor or to run for Senate. There is no reason to. And so you can lock up our votes in those races right now, or maybe not everyone, but you can pretty much bet that libertarians won't run in those races and take your votes away from you if you give us major party status. Now, of course, they will never do this. They'll never do it. But don't complain, Chris, and Melissa for that matter, and they know who I'm talking to. Don't complain that we're running in your races when it is the only option that you have given us to get ballot access. If you don't like the rules, then change the rules. That's really all I have to say. That is all I have to say for tonight. So, it's 1 a.m. And yeah, I think that's all I got. Guys, I'm going to go to bed. I will be back tomorrow. And please mount that like button if you haven't already. Please subscribe to the channel if you have not. I will be streaming at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, that's all I got, guys. Thank you for hanging out with me tonight. I hope you appreciated it. See you soon.